Okay, good morning po. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat and welcome po to our webinar, Ugnayan Navigating the Futures of Local Governance in the Philippines. I am Xavier Ven Asuncion, a university researcher at the Center for Local and Regional Governance, or CLRG, of the University of the Philippines, National College of Public Administration and Governance, UP NCPAG. Thank you all for joining us today. This webinar marks the culmination of CLRG's month-long celebration of our 58th anniversary and also serves as the commencement of our Ugnayan Webinar Series in partnership, of course, with the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP. So we have organized a series to provide a platform for meaningful discussions with local government practitioners and experts about decentralization and potential policy reforms, particularly in the Local Government Code, or RA 7160, which has not undergone a comprehensive review and amendments since its enactment in 1991. So through this webinar, we aim to tackle and address some of the persistent issues and challenges faced by local government units in our country. So before we proceed with our program, let me briefly outline the schedule for today's webinar. Currently, we are in the opening segment, followed by the 20-minute lecture proper later. Afterward, we will hear 10-minute reactions from our invited discussants. And following that, we will have an open forum from approximately 11 to 11:20 a.m. And finally, we will wrap up around 11:20 to 11:30 a.m. So to officially begin our program, for his opening remarks, we'll be playing a video of Dr. Christopher Berse, Dean of UP NCPAG.
Isang maganda at mapagpalang umaga sa ating lahat. To our esteemed panelists, Governor Dax Cua, Yusek Ringan, Dr. Chong Vilayvan, and of course, Dr. Ugadan, and to all participants joining us here in Zoom or via our live stream today, I extend a warm welcome to you all. Today, we gather to reflect on the progress we have made since the enactment of RA 7160, or the Local Government Code of the Philippines, which revolutionized subnational governance in Southeast Asia over 30 years ago. And this landmark legislation devolved significant powers to our local government units, or LGUs, challenging the centralized approach that was prevalent in the region. The Local Government Code, among others, aimed to foster self-reliance, improve service delivery, and drive local economic development by empowering LGUs to plan, perform additional functions, and generate their own resources through taxes and other means. Embracing the principle of subsidiarity, the code envisioned a more empowered and responsive local government. However, despite our initial strides in decentralization, our LGUs continue to face institutional challenges that impede the realization of the code's aspirations. Many LGUs still heavily rely on national government shares, struggling to generate sufficient revenues to meet their mandated expenditures. Limitations in technical and administrative capacities have also hindered the efficient delivery of local services. Additionally, issues such as corruption, patronage systems, and political dynasties have also consistently undermine the success of decentralization efforts in our country. On this note, I commend the UP Center for Local and Regional Governance of NCPAG and of course ULAP for organizing this Ugnayan Webinar Series, providing a platform for local government practitioners, scholars, stakeholders, as well as the general public to engage in meaningful discussions on issues related to local governance. Together, we can explore policy-relevant solutions, particularly potential amendments to the local government code, which has remained largely unchanged since its enactment in 1991. As the name Ugnayan suggests, signifying connection in English, I encourage all participants to actively contribute, ensuring that our discussions are participatory and inclusive and take us beyond just discussing ideas, but really identifying areas where we could possibly work together and connect on a long-term basis. By integrating diverse perspectives, we can identify and advocate for policy reforms in a holistic manner. In line also with the paradigm that I advocate for as Dean of NCPAG, I'm particularly interested to hear your insights on reshaping the culture of our local officials, our local governance, from being just lingkod bayan or public servants to lingkod bayani or public service heroes through institutional improvements. How do you propose we cultivate a brand of public leadership among local officials that goes beyond their duties and truly serves the welfare and common good of the people? I look forward to our discussions this morning, and I anticipate that this activity, along with the upcoming webinars in our Ugnayan series, will strengthen our connection and propel us towards achieving our shared goals of improved decentralization in the country, more empowered LGUs, and most importantly, a well-served public. Muli, maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa atin.
Okay, thank you so much for those insightful opening remarks, Dean Bersen. So let me just reiterate the importance of active participation and inclusivity in this webinar. As mentioned by our Dean, Dr. Berse, among the reasons why we actually organized this webinar, so that each and every one of us will have the opportunity to be a part of the discussions on how we can improve our policies to enhance the effectiveness and responsiveness of our local governments in serving us, their constituents. So throughout the course of this webinar, for us to have a fruitful and engaging discussion, we encourage everyone to use the Q&A box if you have any questions or if there's anything that you want to share. They will be entertained during our open forum. Please also specify the panel member you're addressing your question or comment to. Okay, so without further ado, let us now proceed to our lecture proper with our distinguished resource speaker. Our speaker has dedicated more than 2 decades of his life to public service, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to serving the public. His journey began in 2001 when he became the country's youngest vice governor at the age of 23. After serving as vice governor for 2 consecutive terms, he was elected as the governor of the province of Quirino. Later on, he also assumed the role of congressman and once again returned as governor. Currently, he holds significant positions as the national chairman of the Leagues of Provinces of the Philippines and the national president of ULAP. Additionally, he holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines. So during his talk, he will provide valuable insights into the state of decentralization in our country, and he will also present an overview of ULAP's proposal, which aims to foster a more service-oriented approach within our local government units. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honorable Daquila Carlo Dax Cua. Gov?
Thank you, Xavier. Good morning po sa ating lahat. May I now begin with my brief presentation with the aid of our technical persons. So first, allow me to thank the CLRG for inviting ULAP and myself to today's Ugnayan Webinar Series on navigating the futures of local governance in the Philippines. I'm sure that about 36 years ago, when our lawmakers and policy experts were in the plenaries discussing the provisions of what would eventually be the Local Government Code of the Philippines, they too had to discuss, debate upon, and foresee how it is that we can navigate the futures of local governance in the Philippines. The Local Government Code has indeed played a pivotal role in empowering local communities, granting them the autonomy and authority to address their unique challenges and realize their full potential. It has fostered democratic participation, decentralization, and a semblance of equitable distribution of resources across the nation. The Code's comprehensive scope encompasses various aspects ranging from fiscal management and public service delivery to participatory decision-making and grassroots development. However, our collective experiences of 32 years and the advent of modernization give us the privilege of delving into the intricate complexities and emerging trends that shape the future trajectory of local governance in our country. This opportunity allows us to navigate through the multifaceted dimensions of our nation's governance landscape, exploring innovative approaches, best practices, and collaborative solutions to address the evolving needs and aspirations of our local communities. Since 1991, there has been a drastic change in the environment in which the local governments operate. For one, the age of digitization has accelerated the development of new technologies, which translates to the expansion and/or development of services, which the current local framework may not fully take advantage of at the moment, but may be helpful in public service delivery and fiscal management. Considerations for climate action and sustainable development goals also need to be strengthened as the country has become more conscious of disaster response and resilience, being fated victims thereof, as well as the changes brought about by climate change, such as the threat faced by coastal communities and climate migration, which affect movement from and to territorial boundaries. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the response and readiness for health emergency and crises of the LGUs have been tested. The great disconnect between policies and the needed interventions, as well as the lack of capability to manage constituents' welfare, has left some LGUs lagging compared to others. Growing demand for internalization and globalization of trade and labor, as well as opportunities for PPP or public-private partnerships, may also need to be reinforced to enable the LGUs to become able partners in nation building. Growing demand, as it stands, the current decentralization framework, which aims to decentralize power and services in its 32 years of existence, appears to have not sufficiently enabled the LGUs to realize their fullest potential. For instance, the HDI, or Human Development Index, which measures the quality of life for a composite index of life expectancy, education, and per capita income indicators, has grown only from 0.60 to 0.70 since 1991, with the Philippines lagging behind its regional peers, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Inequality of wealth since 1991 has only decreased from 48% to 42%, reflecting the almost unchanged disparity between classes in the Philippines. Likewise, poverty indices have not improved to the expected level in the country, with only an 11% decrease in poverty incidence since the last 32 years. Several surveys and studies have been conducted on the problems of local governments in the Philippines. These surveys and studies have identified various challenges and issues faced by LGUs in the nation, such as limited financial resources, inadequate infrastructure, poor governance, corruption, and weak intergovernmental relations. Next slide. For decades, the LGUs have been receiving a relatively small share of the national taxes, despite being responsible for providing a wide range of basic services such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure. You will see in the graphs that the ERA or NTA shares of LGUs in the past 9 years and how about 33 subsequent laws have been passed since 1991, devolving additional functions to LGUs, most of which LGUs believe to be unfunded mandates. This decades-long struggle culminated in 2018 with the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas-Garcia petitions. While the ruling provided a positive development for LGUs, certain challenges have surfaced, particularly on the implementation of the ruling, which has been quite devolution-centered. This means that the focus has been on transferring more responsibilities to LGUs as part of the national government's fiscal management strategy. Hence, we are now at a crossroads of 2 points of view. On one hand, we have the national government asking itself how it can ensure that there would not be any corresponding diminution in the delivery of public services, or even ensure improved service delivery, even as its spending on its own account is reduced because of the ruling. While on the other hand, LGUs are baffled how their LGU can undertake all the functions relegated to it by the 20 national government agencies and still be able to improve service delivery for our constituents. However, the plain and simple fact of the matter is that ultimately the goal of both national and local governments is to improve service delivery. That's a common denominator. Delivery to the people regardless of the perspective. This means being able to provide quality and efficient public services that are accessible, timely, and responsive to the needs of our people. Ultimately, what we need to do is to improve services for the people. Our proposal in ULAP is that instead of relegating national programs from national government agencies down to LGUs through devolution as a response to the Mandanas-Garcia ruling of the Supreme Court, we must empower our LGUs to become able partners in nation building and in the attainment of the national development agenda by allowing them to improve their service delivery functions in a way that is responsive to the needs of their respective constituents. ULAP's proposal for decentralization transcends mere power transfer. It is a paradigm shift that empowers local authorities as agents of change, amplifies citizen participation, and paves the way for inclusive governance that truly serves the need of our communities. To put more context, the current fiscal management response of the government to the Mandanas-Garcia ruling is EO 138, series of 2021, which seeks for full devolution of certain national government functions to LGUs, which means that there will be about 20 national government agencies enumerating functions they will no longer be doing and would want LGUs to take over this passing the buck enumeration in the DPPs. Consequently, you will have about 46,000 local government units from provinces, cities, municipalities to barangays, assuming these various functions identified by the national government agencies. Our stance is that instead of asking LGUs to undertake an X amount of functions relegated to them by the national government agencies, instead focus only on essential functions or programs that will improve basic service delivery at the local levels, particularly those that will contribute to the realization of the country's national development agenda, as embodied in the PDP or Philippine Development Plan. ULAP's proposal is to have a needs-based, data-driven, and scientific approach wherein additional funds received by LGUs could be utilized based on their unique needs, plans, and aspirations. With this, we will be able to clearly identify development goals and come up with a pragmatic menu of services and improve national service delivery standards and develop service delivery indices and ultimately empower local governments. How do we do this then? Yan yung mahirap na tanong. In broad terms, this means that we have to review all the services that are being performed by the government, backcast what we want to achieve in line with the Philippine Development Plan, the socio-economic agenda of the President and the administration, and other national frameworks, evaluate the performance of current programs, and identify best practices and map out expert recommendations on how these services could be better improved. Once the pooling, backtracking, backtasking, and mapping out have been carried out, we can now determine essential services by continuing ideal, actual, and recommended services. And once we have identified these, we will be able to identify what essential services have to be delivered to the public. Again, once these essential services have been identified, the scope and scale of service delivery can be determined. The scale and scope approach proposed by ULAP involves the scientific determination of what specific basic services and additional mandates must be undertaken by LGUs and which levels of government should provide these services to meet needs of each LGU's constituents. The key is to unbundle the services to the degree that is necessary to apportion the components of broad functions between stakeholders involved in service provision, production, in an exclusive manner. The resulting list of essential health services and their scope and scale of delivery can serve as a guide for developing a service-oriented plan and prioritizing the allocation of resources. The case of disasters. Take a look, for instance, at disasters. Disaster is a broad sectoral concept. But when we unbundle this service to smaller units based on their basic components of disaster management, such as disaster preparedness, disaster response, and recovery. For the sake of discussion, let us now focus on one of these major disaster preparedness stages, which is disaster preparedness. Activities can include the following: risk assessment and hazard mapping, early warning systems, community education and awareness, emergency planning and preparedness infrastructure and critical facilities for resilience. Risk assessment and hazard mapping. This task is best, we believe, carried out by cities and municipalities in collaboration with barangay. Given their control over a defined geographic area, they can effectively identify areas prone to natural hazards and assess the potential impact of disasters. By involving barangays, we have direct knowledge of local conditions, the benefits and costs of risk assessment and hazard mapping can be internalized at the community level. Early warning systems. Barangays are in the best position to establish and maintain early warning systems because they have direct access to the people who will benefit from these systems, allowing for timely dissemination of disaster warnings information. Of course, the source of early warnings can come from national government and our scientists. Community education and awareness. Again, barangays being closest to the communities are well suited to conduct campaigns, training programs, and drills to educate residents about disaster risks, preparedness measures, and evacuation procedures. They can directly engage with community members and tailor initiatives to address specific local needs and concerns. In fact, they can already have designated point persons in every corner of the barangay. Emergency planning and preparedness. Considering the scope and scale of this service, it is advisable for cities and municipalities to take the lead in developing disaster response plans, organizing and conducting simulations and exercises. This level of governance can coordinate efforts, pool resources, and ensure a more comprehensive and cohesive approach to emergency planning and preparedness. Provinces, as higher levels of governance, shall play a supervisory role to ensure harmonization and responsiveness across cities and municipalities, and inter-LGU coordination can be taken on by the provinces. Infrastructure and critical facilities for resilience. Ensuring that infrastructure and critical facilities are designed and constructed to withstand disasters and continue functioning during emergencies should be an effort of the barangays, cities and municipalities, and the provinces. For small-scale infrastructure, such as barangay evacuation centers, local health centers, or community-based early warning systems, the primary responsibility lies with the barangays. But barangays don't have the sufficient funds, so therefore that can be reviewed to be supported by cities, municipalities, and provinces. Barangays are in the best position to identify specific needs and vulnerabilities of their communities and ensure the construction and maintenance of these facilities to enhance disaster resilience at the local level. At the city and municipal levels, the focus should be on medium-scale infrastructure and critical facilities that serve larger populations to cover wider areas. Examples include city or municipal evacuation centers, emergency operation centers, water supply systems, and communication networks. Cities and municipalities should allocate resources and collaborate with the relevant stakeholders to design, construct, and maintain these facilities to withstand disasters and enable responsive and recovery operations. And on a larger scale, provincial authorities play a crucial role in overseeing the resilience of critical infrastructure and facilities that serve the entire province or multiple municipalities. These may include provincial hospitals, major transport and road networks, water and sanitation systems, and power distribution infrastructure. Provinces can coordinate with national government agencies, cities, and municipalities to ensure the resilience of these critical assets and promote interconnectivity and collaboration in disaster management efforts. By being clear in identifying the scope and scale of the services to be delivered by each level of government through the service delivery-oriented approach, we are holding the concerned local government unit or national agency accountable. It allows us to fix the problem instead of fixing the blame. In determining the scope and scale of service delivery, it is important to consider the concept of complementing and supplementing roles. Complementing role refers to the collaboration and coordination of different levels of government and stakeholders to ensure that essential services are delivered efficiently and effectively. On the other hand, supplementing role refers to the provision of additional resources or support by higher levels of government to lower levels of government to ensure the delivery of essential services. In other words, we have to be able to determine what level of government could complement or, on the other hand, supplement the efforts of identified responsible government offices in order to ensure efficient and quality public services. I'm almost done. With this approach, we hope that we could finally be able to provide quality and efficient public services that are accessible, timely, and responsive to the needs of the people. If today our LGUs have to be encumbered with unfunded mandates, we hope to be able to enhance service delivery, determine clear functional responsibilities and expenditure assignments as well, have an efficient allocation of resources, align with the national development agenda, strengthen partnerships, create funded mandates, and adopt a modern approach to local governance. And finally, establish data-driven service delivery for the Filipino people. It is on this note that we are inviting our partners in this webinar series to work with us in ULAP to realize our collective aspiration of service-oriented local government units. At present, ULAP is actively engaged in a collaborative effort with, obviously, the Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, through the very supportive Secretary Benjamin Avalos Jr., to meticulously develop the intricate details of this approach, in accordance with the directives of the President, of course. But we are inviting partners from the national government agencies, of course, our fellow local government units and officials, our academic institutions like UP, CLRG, policy centers, and policy experts as well to join us in materializing our vision of a service delivery enhanced centered framework. Once again, may I extend our heartfelt appreciation to the CLRG for organizing this significant webinar series, and to the DILG and the ADB for joining us today, and to all our participants of the webinar. Together, let us seize this opportunity to forge new horizons and collectively contribute to the betterment of local government units in the country. As we steer the rudder to drift from what is to what could be, and navigate the future to local governance in the Philippines, I see that the future is indeed local. Thank you, and mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Okay, thank you so much, Governor Dax, for your presentation. Among others, you touched on the challenge faced by our LGUs in terms of their capacity limitations to effectively absorb the numerous devolved functions, and that despite the Mandansky ruling, which provided LGUs with additional ERA or NTA shares, its implementation, as you said, has been quite devolution-centered. This means that while LGUs now have increased resources, this is somewhat being offset by the additional responsibilities that the national government expects LGUs to undertake. So within this context, we introduced ULAP's proposal for a service-oriented paradigm, which generally seeks to foster a shift towards a more collaborative and cooperative dynamics between and among the national government and the local government units, as well as to have a more selective and scientific approach in reassigning functions. Okay, so now let me introduce our set of reactors for our webinar this morning. Okay, so our first reactor is Yusek Marlo Iringan. He is currently the Undersecretary for Local Government at the Department of the Interior and Local Government, DILG. He began his career in public service with the then Department of Local Government as Barangay Government Operations Officer. He then became the Provincial Director of Cagayan and also served as Assistant Regional Director in the same region. From 2013, he served as OIC in the DILG Region 2 and later on became a full-fledged Regional Director in 2015. From 2016 to 2021, he was reassigned as the Regional Director of the DILG Cordillera Administrative Region, CAR. Early in 2021, he was designated OIC Undersecretary for Local Government of the DILG. Then in March, he was appointed full-fledged Undersecretary. And our second reactor is Dr. Ekapon Chongwilaywan. He's a senior economist specializing in public finance at the Asian Development Bank, ADB. Through ADB's lending and technical assistance, he supports the governments in Southeast Asia for public finance management, policy, and reforms, including tax reforms, medium-term fiscal planning and budgeting, and public debt management. Prior to his current role, he was a country economist for the Philippines in ADB's Philippines country office. He joined ADB in 2013 through the Young Professional Program and had experience in ADB's Southeast Asia Department, Pacific Department, and Strategy and Policy Department. He also holds a PhD degree in economics from the National University of Singapore. And our third reactor is our boss, Dr. Reginald Ugadan, who is our current director at UP CLRG and also an assistant professor at UP NCPAG. He earned his master's and doctorate from the Graduate School of Governance at Sungkyunkwan University, Seoul, Korea. Dr. Ugadan also serves as the Program Director of the Governance Futures Lab at UP-NCPAG. He leads research initiatives in various areas, including public management, disaster management, global and local governance, e-government and e-policy, strategic foresight, and performance management systems in the Philippine local government. Okay, so following Ulap's discussion, I believe the next step now should be how we can operationalize their proposal through policy amendments. So to facilitate this, I have taken note of some processing questions for each of our reactor that they can address, perhaps with their discussions or during the open forum. So for Yusek Iringan, our first reactor, before I turn over the floor to you, Yusek, in light of ULAP's proposed paradigm shift in the dynamics between the national and local governments, do you believe there is a need for policy amendments regarding the role of the ILG? Presently, under our institutional and legal framework, the President exercises only general supervision and not control over LGUs, with the DILG serving as the main conduit. As a result, the DILG's responsibilities have primarily revolved around issuing guidelines and providing capacity building services to enhance the absorptive capacity of LGUs in fulfilling their devolved functions. Do you believe the current system is sufficient, or do you think there should be further expansion of the authority of the ILG? Okay, so Yusek Iringan.
Thank you very much, Xavier, and magandang umaga po sa ating lahat, especially to our presenter a while ago, the Governor of Quirino Province, Governor Dax Cua, to all my fellow panelists and those participating online. Pleasant morning from the Department of Local Government. First, I'd like to mention that Xavier said a while ago that I started my career with the then DLG as Barangay Government Relations Officer. It was way back in 1989, pre-local government days. And I also already mentioned a while ago that the framers of Republic Act 7160 envisioned a more active role of the local governments in the attainment of national development. And by and large, I'm looking at how our local government units performed since 1992, when the code was implemented. A lot of our LGUs are doing good. Although it was mentioned that there are still a lot of challenges, that there are still a lot of issues and concerns that will have to be looked into in order to come up with very, very ideal scenario for decentralization. The Executive Order 138 came about because of the decrease in the fund of the national government brought about by the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas Garcia petition. So naturally, the national government will have to look for ways and means to mitigate the fiscal impact of the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling. And one of the things that the national government came up with is to devolve some of the functional services which national government agencies are still doing at that time to local government units. It is not only those provided in the Section 70 of the Local Government Code, but also of the subsequent laws that were enacted after the Local Government Code, as mentioned by Governor Dax while ago. And to affirm what he said, indeed, these laws which were enacted after 1991 required a lot of deliverables from the local government units, which are unfunded, as mentioned by Governor Dax. But by and large, the devolution that EU 138 envision are those which are provided in the local government code. But to just to make it clear to everybody, the functions and services which are to be devolved by the national government agencies to LGUs are not really expected. We really do not expect our local government units to absorb all the devolved functions and services. We agree, we subscribe to the principle of local autonomy. That is why we know that the implementation of the functions and services and facilities are contingent on the LGU development priorities, their institutional capacities, and the availability of the resources. We do not want to dictate to the local government units what programs and projects they have to implement in their areas of responsibility, because we believe that they are in the best position to determine which of these initiatives and programs would respond to the obtaining situation in the local government. But when the president took office on July 1 of 2022, he gave directive to all national government agencies, especially to both DBM and the DILG, to revisit the provisions of Executive Order 138, knowing the issues and concerns and the challenges that our local government units are facing. Having been a governor himself in the years past, and taking cue from the president, we revisited some of the initiatives of the DILG, and if it's any consolation, the DILG's proposal moving forward is generally aligned and consistent with the current initiatives and advocacies of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, as articulated by Governor Dax Cua. So moving forward, the DILG anchors its actions and initiatives on making sure that this decentralization will become more meaningful. And therefore, moving forward, we endeavor to help develop the capabilities of local governments to better deliver basic services and critical facilities for their constituents, for them to be able to increase productivity and promote local economic growth, particularly making sure that there is peace and order and streamlining of systems and processes in the local government units. We are also working with the national government agencies to come up with clear and sound service delivery standards, so that the LGUs will be properly guided as to the outputs and outcomes and results of these functions and services. And also, we are working with national government agencies to augment the resources of local government units in the delivery of functions and services. By and large, we agree with what Xavier said a while ago. There is a need to revisit all the policies and the terms of engagement of the DILG with our local government units. We are looking at an active role of higher local governments, provinces over cities and municipalities over their barangay, for the higher local government units to exercise more or better supervision over their constituents component LGUs, as mandated by the local government code. Not only in providing development direction, but also in providing the necessary technical assistance and augmentation of resources for the implementation of projects that would redound to the welfare of their constituents. Governor Dax mentioned a while ago, for example, the role of the provinces over their constituent cities and municipalities. The province, as envisioned, should be able to provide the proper direction on the programs and projects that would impact on the different cities and municipalities in the province. Not only for in respect to the functions and services given to the province, but also in respect on how the cities and municipalities would deliver the functions and services as provided by the local government code. We expect our local government units to take the primary role and strengthen their capacity. Governor Dax mentioned a while ago about the requirement of the Executive Order 138 for our local government units to come up with a devolution transition plan. The LGU DTP is envisioned to contain the current functions and services that the LGUs are delivering. But more importantly, it contains the capacity development needs of the local government units, which could be used by the national government agencies as a reference in providing the necessary development, capacity development interventions to enhance the capacity of our local government units. Plus, it also contains the proposed organizational structure and staffing pattern of the LGUs, so that the LGUs will be able to deliver the functions and services for their constituents. While it is true that it is important to determine the functions and services that will have to be delivered by its level of government, the equally important thing is collaboration and coordination with the different levels of government. That is the reason why on the part of the DILG, we are looking at the analysis that we made, with respect to the DTPs of local government units. We have made an analysis as to which areas and which geographic regions would need, for example, more capacity development on agriculture, on disaster risk reduction and management, so that national government agencies can take cognizance of this, deliver a more targeted and more focused interventions for this particular local government units. Moving forward also, we came up with our LGU capacity performance analysis. We came up with our quadrants, where we categorize our local government units into high capacity and high performance LGUs, low capacity and high performance LGUs, high capacity, low performance LGUs, and low capacity, low performance LGUs. It is expected that local national government agencies will focus more of their effort in capacitating local government units which fall under low capacity and low performance LGUs. And focus also or targeted or specific interventions on those LGUs which are categorized under low capacity, high performance, high capacity but low performance local government units. We envision that those LGUs which belong to the high capacity and high performance LGUs would help their fellow local government units hurdle the challenges and share their best practices, so that other LGUs would also learn from how they implement their programs and projects. As a way of collaborating with the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, we are looking into how we can propose amendments to the local government code, particularly along the areas of fiscal decentralization, the cycles of tax, reclassification of our local government units, and how we can make the distribution of the national tax allocation more equitable to local government units, and focusing on areas which are considered geographically isolated and depressed areas, those areas which have high poverty incidence, areas which are mostly visited by risk and hazards, calamities, and areas where there are challenges in peace and order and climate change. So those are some of the things that the DILG is now going into. But more importantly, we also help in determining which of these functions and services should be delivered by different levels of governance. Particularly, we look at public services with significant interjurisdictional externalities or benefit and cost spillovers that are best assigned to higher levels of government, while those with little or no benefit spillover are best administered and financed by lower local government units. Also, public services that involve economies of scale, we believe are best assigned to higher levels of governments, and programs and projects and services which are considered targeted programs and projects, and these are PPAs, which would need big funding requirements or big ticket projects, PPAs which require highly technical and specialized expertise, should be implemented by higher levels of governments. And but more importantly, as I mentioned a while ago, we are working with the national government agencies and the local government units to make sure that our LGUs are also will be able to improve their capacities in terms of program implementation. So we look forward to the discussion with the participants and the other panelists in this session. Good morning, and good morning, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek, for your your discussion. No? So the current efforts of the ILG, especially in terms of capacity building, are also aligned with the ULAP's proposal. And let me just reiterate what you mentioned a while ago about that the DILG is not expecting LGUs to absorb all functions that will be fully devolved as a result of the Mandanos-Garcia ruling and EO 138. No, this of course in line with their local autonomy. And in terms of my question earlier about expanding the authority of the DILG, you said that it may be explored at the policy level if the DILG could also exercise higher supervision. But in terms of specific amendments, you mentioned that the area on fiscal decentralization is you're exploring most, that area in terms of what could be amended in the local government code, which is a good transition to our next discussion or next reaction from a public finance expert, Dr. Ecapon. So this is my question to Dr. Ecapon. So what solutions do you propose to address persistent fiscal challenges, such as horizontal and vertical fiscal imbalances that have affected our LGU since the enactment of the local government code? Governor Cua earlier mentioned ULAP's aspiration through their proposal for efficient resource allocation and clearly defined functional responsibilities. So in your opinion, what do you think are the major reforms that should be implemented in the local government code, especially in terms of aligning revenue generation powers and expenditure assignments to realize the objectives of ULAP? Okay. So the floor is yours, Dr. Ecapon.
Thank you, Xavier, for the question. And first of all, Magandang Umaga, Governor Dax Cua, Yusek Malo, Dr. Ugandan, and also the colleagues from LGU. Before I go to my answer to the questions, perhaps I will share my insight into overall ADB engagements with Philippine government on fiscal decentralization. I have been quite fortunate to have been involved with the Philippine government to support the crafting and implementation of the executive order 138 to implement the Mandanas ruling. My involvement in fiscal decentralization reform happened at the time in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I realized how important it is to strengthen the devolution of public services. Listening to Governor Dax Cua, right, I actually feel very excited. I think the Governor Dax Cua proposal on the amendments of the 1991 LGC is on the right track, and it is fully aligned with the basic principle of fiscal decentralization. Funds follow functions. It's very important that when we assign the funding to the local governments, right, we have to ensure that those fiscal transfer will be translated into public services. And the experience of the implementation of the Mandanas ruling in the past year or two is a stark reminder that the high reliance on the national tax allotment will not be adequate to ensure the fiscal sustainability of the LGU. And one part of it is that I think Executive Order 138 is an excellent opportunity for the devolution of public services. But it happened in the context of the expanded revenue base, right? And that's why the national government and LGU will have to think about the assignment of the functions from the national governments to the local governments. And that's why they are coming up with the X number of services that were previously undertaken by the national government will now be assigned to the LGU. This is just a fraction of the entire spectrum of the fiscal decentralization. And I think Governor Dax Cua proposal really address the fundamental problems of the local governance reform in the Philippines. How to link the overall fiscal resources of the LGU with the local service delivery. Now we are not looking at the expanded tax base, that will go to the LGU. But we are looking at the all source of revenue of LGU from the national tax allotment to the own source revenue. It has to be fully mapped with the service delivery. And this is very extremely important in the context of post-COVID-19 economic recovery. LGU are in the forefront of the response to the health and economic crisis, providing livelihood support, healthcare, vaccine supplies to people during COVID-19. And that load will continue to be even more important in the post-COVID-19 context, given the challenge of climate change. I have been working with the ILG in developing and implementing the Disaster Resilience Readiness Index, right? And one thing that I noticed is that why LGU have done a lot better in terms of the readiness to respond to the climate change, the natural hazard, but the overall index doesn't improve too much. And the reason behind that is that LGU are experiencing more severe natural hazard because of the climate change. Even though the capacity to respond is improving, but severity of the natural hazard is even more. And that trend will go up exponentially. And therefore, it's very important, this is the right time to revisit the 1991 LGC and how to make a stronger linkage between the NTA and own source revenue with the public service delivery. And the ILG play a very critical role here. I also echo Governor Dax Cua that the ILG currently play a very important role in developing guidelines, implementing capacity building. But what I want to see more from the ILG moving forward is two things. One is the role of monitoring of the projects done by LGU, right? I think Yusek Malo is on the right track also to come up with kind of, the result framework that link deliverables of LGU, the projects done by LGU, with the outcome and impact on development, like poverty reduction, addressing inequality, so on and so forth. And another important tool is the incentive mechanism. The ILG will need to design the incentive mechanisms for LGU to deliver public services. And this is the key to link the local fiscal resources with the service delivery. In the Asia Pacific, right, there's so many instruments to provide the incentive mechanisms. In the Philippines, of course, you have the SGLG, Seal of Good Local Governance, whereby the LGU with the SGLG will get extra funding, right? It's called SGLG Incentive Fund. In other countries, they also provide this type of incentive. I think there is a possibility that we can expand the scope of fiscal incentive fund to provide the reward to the LGU that perform well in terms of the service delivery. And this is the one effective mechanism that we see in other countries in the Asia and the Pacific. The second point that I want to note is on the equalization mechanisms. Currently, the 1991 Local Government Code provide a formula for the national tax allotment, but it's only based on two parameters, which is the land size and the population. And as a result, there is kind of the horizontal imbalances. In the sense that relatively small LGU in remote region with small population will get less NTA. And this is outside the control of the ILG or LGU, and they don't have adequate fund to provide public services to local people, and therefore that's where equalization mechanisms come to play. There should be kind of the separate funding that give extra budget allocations to the less privileged LGU, relatively small LGU. And I think Executive Order 138 kind of having that thinking embedded in the regulations by having gross equity fund. And this can be expanded into the amendments of 1991 LGC as well. I think this is another critical areas that can address the current limitations of the fiscal decentralization mechanisms in the Philippines. And the last point, which I think is the most important, is about the own source revenue by LGU. Let me go back to my original statement. Funds follow functions, right? If the LGU continue to heavily rely on NTA, there will be quite limited accountability of LGU to provide the public services. And the COVID-19 pandemic also provide the lessons to LGU that NTA is exogenous to local government, right? You can see that the formula of NTA is a parameter of the land size and population, and the funding that LGU will receive is based on the tax base at the national level. And the tax base is also the function of external parameters like the economic growth, the economic activities. When the economic slow down, NTA will slow down as well. Although the formula under the Mandanas ruling provide more allocation to LGU, right? But when the base is shrinking due to the stage of the global economy, the overall funding to LGU is also shrinking. And as a result, it's quite important that LGU have its own local revenue base to begin with. And you know, the key source of the own source revenue is the real property taxation. Currently, ADB is providing the project loan. We are working with the Bureau of Local Government Finance to strengthen the capacity of LGU for the real property valuation. This is in conjunction with the real property valuation and assessment reform, which is now under the Ways and Means Committee. I think this is another critical area which will supplement the Governor Dax Cua proposal in the amendments of LGC. And lastly, I would like to reiterate ADB partnership with Philippine government, URAB, and LGU in the fiscal decentralization effort. ADB has been a partner with the Philippine government since 2006. It has been almost 20 years of long-term partnership with Philippines on the governance, local governance reform. We think that Philippine government is on the right track, although this is still unfinished business and there's still a lot of work to do. I think ADB is more than happy to continue to be a partner with the Philippine government and embark on the proposed exercise that Governor Dax Cua mentioned, especially the review of the service provision by the LGU, preparing the roadmap, analytical work. We could also bring in the regional and international experience in Asia and Pacific as well. And we have the technical assistance resources, including the current project and programs available to support the ILG and also DBM maybe, and also ULAB as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ekapono. So you mentioned a number of suggestions to improve the state of fiscal decentralization in the country, and of course, I want to emphasize what you mentioned about that NTA share, reliance on NTA shares does not provide for fiscal sustainability at the local level. And you also mentioned that ULAP's proposal already addresses some major issues related to fiscal decentralization. I particularly like your example related to disaster reduction management, that while the capacity of LGU increases, the severity of natural hazards has increased even more. No? So I think this reflects not just the need to consider external factors such as climate change, but also the extent to which LGUs are required to deliver public services and perform certain functions in terms of aligning revenue powers and expenditure assignments. Okay, so for our last reaction, Dr. Ogadan, this is my processing question for you. So as a director of an academic institution that strengthens the capacities of LGUs, what steps do you believe are necessary to establish enduring and sustainable partnerships between LGUs and learning resource institutions, or LRIs. So ULAP's proposal emphasizes the requirement for a needs-based, data-driven, and scientific approach to local service delivery, which would entail the involvement of the academic community. So how do you envision the collaboration between LGUs and LRIs, and what policy level measures do you think should be implemented to facilitate this collaboration effectively?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mikey, and also thank you very much, Governor Dax, to USEC Iringan, and also to Dr. Ekapol for the discussion. If it's all right, then I just prepared a very brief deck. I mean, just to provide also my points for the presentation made by by Governor Dax Cua, and also my thoughts on the questions given by Maki. Yeah. First, I would like to commend Governor Dax Cua for those points, or even the perspectives or the paradigm shift that he made mention. I think the Governor Dax Cua is so, I mean, observant, and he knows, of course, what's happening really in the local government, or to different communities. There's of course an ongoing discussion among academics on the evolving role of the governments, and I just want to point some of the important, of course, evolution. We can also, of course, observe this different evolution from that traditional public management, no public management. And I just want to emphasize, of course, public value management to capture that direction that the ULAP wants really to have. For example, on the role of the government here, as you can see, maybe it's very on that traditional, we roll from no public management, maybe you have heard this already, steering, and now we are into this public value management. And I want, of course, to capture also, it captures, of course, the perspectives of the SDGs, and that we are moving towards that role of serving, if we are going to emphasize, of course, public value management. And you can also see here, of course, that the public interest, that is from traditional public management. You can see that it's defined by politicians. In the new public management, you can see this discussion about the aggregation of individual preferences, and now this public value management, wherein we put emphasis on public value, right, for our citizens. And also, maybe you can see here the role or the goal of the managers. Maybe we can of course we can put in the perspective of an LCE, or a local chief executive. In traditional, maybe you can respond to these political directions, to new public management that we're in, look at agreed performance targets, and now here we respond, of course, to citizens, to the needs of the citizens. That's of course on the public value management. And I'm saying that the discussion a while ago is moving towards that creating public value. And I think, of course, this is something that I've been always emphasizing as an academic, of course, looking at how we can move towards this public value creation. And from this, maybe it's just for you to look at some lens. Of course, as an academic, I always look at what are those possible frameworks that we can employ or adopt to direct a particular change or reform. And as I see it here, of course, we can possibly use this public value-driven perspective, right? And you can see here this part of public value is that looking at what our citizens really needs, right, or what they really want. Right, the buy-in from our citizens is very, very important, and it will follow, of course, the role of the local government on legitimacy and support and operational capabilities. And these three, of course, are very important interaction, or these three may give more. I mean, they can, of course, comply or complement with each other. I can also see here, just for a moment, my client, yeah. Okay, so this perspective, of course, from that public value driven is that we're looking at, of course, the citizens, our citizens. How do we view our citizens nowadays? I've been also discussing about this. Our citizens, if we are going to analyze them, maybe they are, of course, the passive receivers. Maybe they are already on this do-it-yourself services. Maybe we can see that the local government or our citizens nowadays, we are still on this stage of capacitating our citizens, and that we are looking into this how we can enhance or bring them to this activity transfer, where either they can participate or customize, or they can co-design or co-create services for other citizens as well. So it's more of, if we will be moving towards this paradigm or this perspective, we can see that our direction, of course, is moving towards this public value creation. Now, on that question, on the point also of the service-oriented LGUs, as pointed out by Governor Dax Cua a while ago, I really like it on how, of course, he envisions the service orientation or service-oriented local government units. And for me, as working, of course, in the futures world, I can say that I think we can also have or continue the discussion. Using this futures triangle. I just plot, of course, the discussion of Governor Dax Cua a while ago, that this is the status quo. Maybe we can consider, of course, this is the current condition or the wishes of the present, and that we are moving towards this aspiration, or that's the pulse from the future. However, maybe we can also look at on this part, or maybe a discussion that we have to continuously made for us to look at what are the plausible futures for our local government units. Now, some of the discussions a while ago have been raised. Dr. Ekapol also have mentioned maybe that there's a need to look at the local government code. I'm looking at this, of course, as the weight of the history, and that this may, of course, be one of the efforts that we have to look at on how the academe, the ULAP, the DILG, the ADB, and other stakeholders must have to work together towards this, for us to identify what is the weight of the history that may be a barrier towards this achieving this aspiration. And as I see it here, looking at, of course, that different transformation in local governance or the governance in general, the idea of Governor Dax Cua seems to be very strong in terms of, there are lots of course, I don't want, of course, to sound very academic here, but I see that it's well supported by some of the theories or some studies. And maybe we can, of course, enhance that, or maybe we can play an important role also here at the academy or the CLRG. And that's, I think this is the answer to the question that was asked by Makiwal or Xavier about how, of course, how we can possibly enhance that partnership or collaboration between, again, an institute or an LRI like the CLRG or other academic institutions or other centers that are interested or that are working towards local governance. And it may be a very, a traditional, very old idea, but I see the relevance of this town and gown approach to this local governance, or towards, of course, public value driven local governance, helping, of course, the local government and, of course, ULAP towards that direction that they are trying to look at, or the vision. Right. So this town and gown approach, of course, you and I know already that when we talk about this town, we're talking about this local government, and that gown, we're talking about these local universities or schools that may help. So it's of course, this kind of partnership or collaboration is it's for that particular shared goal. Right. So, and that shared goal, of course, it should be towards the growth or development of the local communities. And this partnership, of course, will show that each partner, the town and gown, is a better way to reach, of course, a certain goal or a set of goals. But that if they work they of course we look at some contributions on local growth of the local society. Now, these are just some points that I wanted to emphasize. Institutionalizing or maybe putting into practice this town and gown framework. Maybe the local governments or some institutions like ULAP, they may establish a common goals and priorities. So universities or LRIs, we can identify that common goals and priorities, of course, towards some public value-driven local governance. Maybe we are also looking at if we can enhance or foster collaboration, we can do joint research together, and we can identify, of course, innovations to local governments, and to promote also education and capacity development. Universities, as the gown or LRIs, have the capacity to develop different programs for or capacity development programs for our local government units, just like what we've been doing here at the CLRG. And we can also think of developing community engagement programs like for an extension work of any LRIs or any higher education institutions or universities, and also to work together to advocate for evidence-based policy development. I think this is an area that the local government units, or even, of course, the government agencies, must have to explore. Different universities or different LRIs, if I may, have this vision, of course, to convert different outputs or knowledge products, just like research, to policy, or to be used as an extension, or maybe that can be used for policy making or decision making, meaning we are, of course, advocating towards that evidence-based or data-driven policies. And I think LRIs like CLRG can contribute or can participate or gives some contributions to that. So it's not only about producing some research works, but this or publications, but this knowledge products should be utilized for specific policies, or maybe it can be the other way around, that local government units can tap, of course, the expertise of LRIs to work or to do research for them. Okay, so I think that's all from my end, Mikey, and thank you very much for this, of course, opportunity, and also for everyone who have attended this Ugnayan. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Thank you so much, Doc Reg, for explaining different approaches, or action points on how we can improve the collaboration between LRIs, the academe, as well and ULAP, and as well as LGUs. Okay. So now I would like to invite all our panelists, our resource speakers, to our open forum portion. Okay. So again, if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A box and specify to whom you are addressing your question or comment to. Okay, so let me just check the Q&A box for questions, comments. Okay, so for our first question, it's addressed to Governor Dax. Okay, it says here, thank you for raising the various proposals for a service-oriented approach. Do you intend to have these included in the proposed amendments in the LGC? And how do you propose to gather support for this endeavor? Governor Dax? Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the question. And the goal really here is to rally behind, can appreciate and understand. Obvious objective here is really to provide superior services to our population, and we do that by streamlining processes, identifying critical services, and getting everybody involved, from the barangay level to the municipal, to the province, and to the national. The strategy will be through network with the help of agencies who might believe in the same principle. It is all this is all happening already because of the support and the
Okay, I think Governor Dax is experiencing technical difficulties. I think he's on his way to the airport because he has a flight later. No? So let's just proceed to the second question. Okay. But maybe some of our panel members would also want to answer the question. How do you propose to gather support for the endeavor proposed by ULAP? Maybe you, Sec. Quirino, have...
Yes, Sager. No. Thank you. Actually, we are now working with both houses of Congress, to push for the reforms and the amendments of the local government code. As I mentioned a while ago, we are now working with the Senate, local government committee, and the House local government committee, and we are continuously coordinating with them. With regards to the amendments that we want to see in the local government code. But equally important, we are also working with other national government agencies in order to push for the policies that the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines would want to see in national government agencies, programs, projects, and activities. And the bottom line is how we can help our local government units further improve the delivery of basic services for their constituents. Along the area, for example, of revenue generation, BLGF with the other national government agencies is now in the process of revisiting the joint memorandum circular which we issued in 2016. This is the rationalized planning system to make, for example, the planning calendar more attuned to the opportunity of local government programs and projects being absorbed by national government agencies. Because there is sort of ang tawag mo doon, what do you call that? Lag time, in so far as the proposal, submission proposal to local government units, to the national government agencies are concerned. So we are looking into how we can harmonize further the planning system, the planning calendar.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek. The next question is related to fiscal decentralization. So maybe Dr. Ekapon would like to answer this one. What do you think are the possible non-traditional sources of revenue that LGUs can focus on to increase their fiscal resources? This because generation of income, despite the corporate powers or revenue generation powers of the LGUs, has been particularly difficult, especially in the 5th and 6th income class local government units. So what do you think are some non-traditional sources or means that LGUs can explore?
Sure. Maybe I expound a little bit further. The traditional sources for the own source revenue is the real property taxation, business fees and charges, local business registration, so on and so forth. And you know why this is very important, and we should continue to focus on the traditional sources. I think this question is excellent. I think on the other hand, the LGU, include with the support from the national government, should look into identifying the new sources for the local government. I think there's a few items that ADB has looked into with under the support of the local government governance reform program, and one is about the natural resources. I think Philippines has advantage in terms of the abundance of the natural resources, especially some of the raw materials, and these are kind of it's the untapped areas, and there may be some kind of non-tax revenue mechanisms that we can channel the funds to LGU. I think the current system is that this is quite fundamental in the sense that the current tax systems in the Philippines, right? We don't have the VAT on the natural resources, or it has not been fully implemented. And as a result, the information of the natural extraction is not fully captured by the national government or local government. Basically, we don't know exactly, for example, one company that do mining, how much it has been extracted or has been produced. And as a result, the revenue has not been fully generated. And I think this one go a little bit beyond the amendments of the LGC. It's more on the national tax policy reform in general. But I think it will have a significant impact in generating the revenue for both the national and local government. I think that the natural resources is one area that I would think that there's a huge potential to be the key source of the local government revenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ekapon. Yes.
With regards to this point raised by our participants, we have to go back to the determination of how we compute or we determine the income class of our local government units. Dr. Ekapon mentioned a while ago that the basis is population, that's 50%, 25% land area, and 25% equal sharing. And if you look at the profile of the 5th and 6th class municipalities, a lot of them actually are located in geographically isolated and depressed areas. And highlands of the Cordilleras and other regions in the country. So definitely, like it or not, the opportunities available to these LGUs are very, very limited. They are limited. Much as they would want to collect more local income, the fact that there are very minimum number of businesses, which are very, very viable in these areas, would influence or affect their local income. So this is where actually the proposal for the equity fund will come in as much as there are limited opportunities for the 5th and 6th income class local government units. The proposal moving forward, a lot of LGUs is to look into the basis in determining the national tax allocation share. I mentioned a while ago 25% is equal sharing. Perhaps we need to revisit that to make it equity sharing, meaning giving more to those who need more in terms of the challenges that they face, in terms of the calamities that they have every year, in terms of the peace and order problem that they have. So definitely you cannot compare a local government unit in the highlands of the Cordilleras, 5th class local government unit, with the 5th class local government unit in Region 3, where opportunities are better. So these are things that we, together with the OLAP, are looking into. Of course, it is a zero-sum game. Kasi if you increase the share of one local government unit, which is located in the geographically isolated in the best areas, necessarily you will also decrease the share of other local government units in other areas. But while it is a contentious issue, it is something that we need to discuss eventually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sec. So that's one area of amendment that we can explore in the local government code in terms of the NTA distribution. Okay. All right, so for the next question, for Dr. Ogadan, can you please share with us an example of a successful LGU academe collaboration? And what has been the impact of this collaboration to both stakeholders and the community?
I can identify some cases, but I can say, of course, small partnerships, for example, of different LGUs and then academe. I would like to be honest. I think this is not yet well explored or well maximized, if I may say, no, that partnership, no, between local government units and an institution. I can say some in the north, if I may say, for example, cases in the north, that there are activities for extension of a university, that's directly, of course, for local government development. However, there's no specific partnership made. No, it's more of an initiative, no, of a local university, no, located in the north. But that's what I've been, of course, I'm saying that maybe if we can institutionalize, or if we can have that mechanism, that we can bring together LGUs and then also state universities or higher education to partner. There are initiatives, of course, of that I've seen, of course, from um, the DILG. They invite, of course, different universities to be an LRI in particular research work. For example, they engage different universities. For example, in the case of UPN CLRG, DILG engages a research institute like us, to conduct citizen satisfaction or index survey, something like that. And they also engage in different research works. I think we just have to continue or to institutionalize something like this, particularly of maybe a particular local government unit. If we can, of course, tap the expertise of these different universities to help inform or give a data-driven or research or evidence driven policies or maybe ordinances, that might be of great help. I think we have to make more of this kind of partnership, to emphasize, of course, the that kind of contribution that a local or that a higher education institution can provide. As I've mentioned a while ago, that framework of town and count approach could be used, as a very good framework, to continue that collaboration.
Jigger, okay.
Yes, go ahead, Yusek.
Oo. Kanina na-mention ko yung analytics na ginawa ng DILG, with regards to the LGU devolution transition plans and with regards to the result of the Seal of Good Local Governance in 2021 or in 2019. We collaborated with a lot of local research institutions, in coming up with the analysis. And we made it a point that we do it by regional geographic area, region, the level of the regional office, because we want the analysis to be more focused on particular areas, in the country. So a lot of LRIs, have helped us come up with the analysis of those documents that I mentioned a while ago. Before I left Baguio City, I had a conversation with Mayor Magalong. Baguio City has 128 barangays. And the concern from Mayor Magalong back then is how to, effectively monitor the implementation of development projects in the 120 barangays. What we recommended is for him to tie up with the universities in Baguio, because Baguio is the center of education in Northern Luzon. And there are a lot of civil engineering universities offering civil universities, colleges offering civil engineering courses. So perhaps we recommended that he coordinate, he work with these universities and colleges, so that perhaps fifth-year engineering students in these schools and colleges, universities, will be able to help the city of Baguio monitor the implementation of infrastructure projects in the 128 barangays. Considering that the city engineering office has a limited number of personnel. So these are some of the collaborations perhaps that we can have with the colleges and universities.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek and Doc Reg for answering the question. Okay, I see some of our participants raising their hand. I think they want to ask their questions live. No? So I would like to call Ma'am Zita Kalugay.
Ma'am Zita, you can unmute yourself if you would like. there.
We can't hear you, ma'am. Okay, let's have Sir Carlito Hipolito first to ask his question.
Sir, once again, you may unmute. Seems they are having technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think
Perhaps
we're having
you know.
technical difficulties. Let's just entertain, in the interest of time, let's just entertain two questions from our chat box. Okay. Question, what is your opinion about professionalizing barangay officials, especially barangay secretaries and treasurers?
Yeah, I think that is for me. Well, anyway, if we talk about professionalizing barangay officials, what do we mean by that? Are we going to, set a qualification standard, before anybody can file his or her candidacy? Because the Constitution never mentioned about the qualification, except that he or she must be a Filipino citizen, able to read and write, and the age qualification. But insofar as barangay secretaries and treasurers are concerned, I think this can be legislated because it's already done with the qualification of Sangguniang Kabataan Treasurer in the SK Reform Act. But more than that, professionalizing would mean our punong barangays, for the case of secretaries and treasurers, should be, look for really qualified treasurers and secretaries who can perform the responsibility. And aside from that, the DILG and even our local government units are continuously conducting capacity development interventions in order for these people, these officials, to have the technical competency, the skill to perform the responsibilities that are given to them. Also, I would like to remind there are barangays who are in this meeting. The barangay election is fast approaching, and every time we had the barangay election and then we elected officials to assume office, we would be flooded with concerns like punong barangays dismissing the current secretaries and treasurers. We issued a memorandum for this, reminding the punong barangays that if there are no valid reason to fire treasurer and secretaries, please do not do so. Because these secretaries and treasurers have acquired skill, competency of their time, which will be difficult to acquire if there will be new people who will be placed on these certain positions. So if there are no compelling reason, we encourage our barangays to continue working with them.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek. Okay, this will be our last question because it's almost lunchtime. Okay, so LGUs are also designated in terms of income classes per level, and constant updating of classification may be needed to keep track of development. Are there updates on policies in income classification, and how can this affect the performance of LGUs in the future? Any updates on income class?
The last reclassification was done in 2007 or 2008. So between then and now, a lot of things have happened. That is why the local government units are pushing for the reclassification, their reclassification. Back then, it was the Department of Finance which did the reclassification, but because of the DOJ opinion, which is that only Congress is authorized to reclassify local government units. 15 years wala reclassification. But there are now proposals from national government agencies, particularly the oversight agencies, for Congress to pass a law for the updating or reclassification of local government units. So we are now pushing this because it affects operations of our local government units, particularly, for example, the hiring of personnel with regards to the level of the salaries that they receive.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek. Unfortunately, we cannot entertain any more questions because of our limitations in time, in our time, so in schedule. So we'll just collect the remaining questions in the Q&A box and in our chat box, and perhaps we can just forward them later to our resource speakers, and then ask for their responses. Or maybe you could just save your questions and ask them in our next Ugnayan webinar. Okay. So that ends our open forum. Maraming salamat po. And again, thank you so much to our resource speakers, Governor Dax, Yusek Iringan, Dr. Ekapon, and Dr. Ugadan for accepting our invitation to be a part of this webinar. And I hope we can continue in the future, to work together to push and lobby for policy amendments to improve the state of decentralization in the country, to empower LGUs, and to enhance the delivery of local public services. So just a final reminder before we close the room. I would like to ask everyone to please share us your thoughts, comments on the webinar by answering our feedback form. So you may use this link. This link will also be typed by my colleagues in the chat box, or you can also scan the QR code flash on the screen. Okay. Certificates of participation will be issued upon request, which you will have to indicate through the feedback form. So accomplishing the feedback form is necessary to receive a certificate of participation, and also to be eligible for a certificate, you must have tuned in via Zoom for at least 80% of the total webinar duration. Okay, so there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us in this webinar. To stay informed about our upcoming activities, please follow us on Facebook, and we look forward to your continued engagement, and we hope to see you again in the upcoming webinars of our Ugnayan series. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga.